Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. I'm going for the grainy effect of one of my lesser cameras tonight, the iPhone cameras in the back room, and I don't feel like walking back in the rain. I don't want to let you think that I've given up on my desire to broadcast full-time on Rumble. I am going to do that, but for some reason I can't go live on Rumble now. Just as YouTube comes back, it's so freaky the way it works. It says that you need at least 5 subscribers. I have 100 on Rumble, and I don't know. Hi, Steve. I don't know why they're not letting me do it. So it's very strange. Very strange. So as I often do, I'm just going to begin with a little bit of personal information from the mountain. So we have a Chinese company, Chinese dude coming up to the mountain. I think, I'm not sure exactly when, but fairly soon. And I think they're going to take over the abaca business because I haven't had an abaca harvest in a year and a half. And that's because, and this is an amazing thing, okay? It is because the German company, it's Geltfalter, Geltfalter, Geltfalter. They appear to be going into insolvency. They reneged on payment for one of my brothers-in-law, and he has like 1,000 kilograms of abaca in one of the storage buildings on the mountain here. We call them bodegas. And in New York, that's a sandwich spot. But here, it's a storage room where you keep your tools and other supplies on a farm or a ranch or something like that, right? So hey, River Rat. So this is good news that, my investment in the abaca, I probably put, I don't know, maybe $10,000 into the abaca. The thing about investing is you never know for sure whether you're going to get your money back, but I have a philosophy about investing, and it follows certain spiritual principles which go against the grain of everything that our investment culture has been cultivated to do. So I sometimes suffer, I sometimes benefit. It depends on the circumstance. It depends on a number of things. But the Chinese are coming up, and I'm pretty happy about that. I've heard they're not as easy to work with as the Germans. I mean, they're not unfriendly, but what they do is there's 2 grades of abaca. There's grade 1, and that's usually about $1.75 or $1.95 a kilogram. And on a good harvest of my land, I can probably get, I don't know, 5,000 kilograms, 7,000 kilograms. So you're supposed to be doing 2 harvests a year, but I haven't been able to get my abaca to grow in that cleanly. It's an ideal business if you do everything yourself. It's an ideal business for campesinos, peasants. So I want to paint a picture in your mind here. So imagine you live in a wood house. It may have a floor, it may not. The floor might be wood, the floor might be concrete, or the floor might just be matted earth that you walk on every day. And that's like many of my neighbors. Now you may think that's a state of deprivation. You may think that's a 1-800 call-in show after 2 o'clock in the morning on the cable channels in the 1980s and 90s, if you remember them. The bloated belly African baby. Their belly's not bloated because they're full. They're starving. That's gas. That sort of stuff. But I assure you, these people are happier than most North Americans. They're very, very happy people. And they like living that way. I like living this way. Although I don't live in a dirt floor, I live in a very comfortable house with all of the amenities, including Starlink. So I can't really compare myself to them, but I live with them. And I observe how they live. And they can live almost completely without money. It's really kind of remarkable to see. So a campesino can get butter, cheese, eggs, meat, vegetables, fruit. And if they have a little bit of land, they can get their beans, they can get rice. But then they got to work all day, right? Not hard, but you got to wake up every day and you got to go attend to the fields and make sure everything is going okay. Some days there's a lot to do, some days there's not much to do. That's the life of a campesino. And campesino or peasant just means somebody who lives in a sustenance way, lives without money in a rural way. You could say hillbillies is a kind of campesino or peasant, okay? In fact, the American hillbilly, the Appalachian hillbillies, may be the last legitimate remnant of the peasant culture in the United States. Now, 150, 200 years ago, a significant portion of the population was peasant. Okay? They just lived off of what they had around them. If you've ever seen the movie Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood, and they go out to his little wood ranchero there, and his only wealth appears to be 6 hogs in a pig pen, right? That's a campesino lifestyle, right? These people can make their own booze. I shit you not, man. They make a sugar cane liquor that, so really they have everything. Many of them live without electricity. They don't bother getting an electrical hookup to their house. They prefer to just live by lamplight and candlelight. And all of those things are available here. They just don't want the hassle. So these are the people I live with. I live with campesinos. Now, if you have 15 hectares of abaca and you're bringing in 2 harvests a year, and you're doing, I don't know, let's say 15,000 kilograms of abaca a year, and you're doing all the work yourself, well, you're going to have a small expense for gasoline to run the decorticator, which is what shreds the abaca into the fiber that dries that you sell. And that's about your only expense. And I guess maybe boots and machetes, and that's it. So if you're living a campesino life and you have 15 hectares of abaca, man, I'll tell you, they're going to have, like within 2 years, they're going to stay living in that wood shack, and they're going to have a Toyota Helix in the driveway in 2 or 3 years. That's how they roll, man. Like, it's really kind of amazing to see. Now, from my position, where I just do it as a business, I might keep 15, 20, 25%, but I do nothing, okay? And you got to maintain the land in between harvests. You have to go and clean the grass that grows around the abaca plants. And it looks like a tree, but it's actually a plant, okay? Kind of, there's a lot of stuff like that over here. You look at it, you go, that's a tree. And my wife goes, no, that's a plant, right? Like papaya. A papaya tree can go 3-4 meters high. I just said tree. It's a plant. Okay? And they usually have these green mushroom leaves at the top. So there's no such thing as a banana tree. It's a banana plant. But they get quite big. Okay? So you got to go and you got to do that about once every 6 weeks or so. And it's going to take you a month and a half to clean everything. Because 15 hectares, a hectare is 100 meters by 100 meters. Okay, so for those of you who speak American, that's 100 yards by 100 yards. Okay, so 15 hectares is a large piece of land, man. Large piece of land. And it's takes a while to clean it. And all the cleaning is done by machete. And you're out there with like terciopelos, what you folks in the United States call fer-de-lances, one of the most venomous snakes in the world. And then it just goes up from there. You can get bit by a bushmaster. There's no hope of surviving a bushmaster. I know a bushmaster bite. I know a doctor in town who's seen like 100 of them in his 40-year career, and I think 3 people have survived. Okay, Mataway, same thing. Yeah, if you get bit by a Mataway, the universe is taking you out on the A train, like the bullet train. Right? You got like 2-3 minutes to live, and then you're gone. Okay, you get bit, you go, oh my God, that was a Mataway. You go, you sit down beside a tree, you look up at the sun. If you smoke, you light a cigarette, and you get ready to go, because you'll be gone before that cigarette's done. Okay, that's how quickly you die from a Mataway bite. These guys, they just know the jungle, man. They know everything about it, and they just have this sixth sense. And Nicaraguans, Nicaraguans are more native than natives. I suppose it depends, where they're raised, if they're raised in Managua in the city or if they're raised in the country. That's also a big campesino peasant culture in Nicaragua. Most of Central America is peasant culture. Okay? Now, there's cities here. There's super hot chicks. There's gay clubs in the cities. Like, all of the trappings of the West are over here. But for the most part, most people live like campesinos. Now, when foreigners come over here, they don't, for the most part, they don't fit in. They separate themselves. They do this sort of Chinatown thing, right? The way the Chinese move into other places and sort of segregate themselves, I guess is how you would say it. And it's a bit ugly. There's a little bit of a reaction to the foreigners over here now, up in the north in Guanacaste, and this is a very popular area. Very, very popular area. A lot, like every week you read about the movie stars going to some resort in Guanacaste. It's a who's who, Every week I follow the newspapers on Facebook. Noticias CR News, Costa Rica News covers all this stuff, Oh, Salma Hayek's in Costa Rica. Hey, Kevin Costner's in Costa Rica. Hey, Matt Damon's in Costa Rica. Matt Damon actually tells a story on, I forget what late night show it was, like the late night Jimmy Fallon on the late night show or whatever, talks about adopting a cat from Costa Rica, a jungle cat from Costa Rica. Anyways, I digress, as is my way, right? But stay with me here. So if you do all the work yourself, you're going to clear probably about $25,000 a year, which is a king's ransom over here. But I don't. So when I invest up here, I do it to create work. Okay? I literally do it to stimulate the economy for the most part. And I mean, it's not like I'm not making money. I'll make anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 on US on every harvest. Okay? And so that's all there is to it. And I do nothing. I do not clean the land. I do not harvest the abaca. I do absolutely nothing. I just sit back and it makes money. Okay? And it just makes money. Now, I was starting to think that I was going to have to let this go because of what happened to Geltfalter. So this news about the Chinese company is good news. And apparently they called my wife, or they called someone in the family. I think Geltfalter might have given up their client list to this Chinese company when they went under. Now, I'm all over the place here, but I'm going to bring it back in. Here's the relevant point. We are on a spider web now all over the world. And the spider is what wove the web. And the spider is what maintains the web, so to speak. Okay? Now, I don't know if you folks know this or not, but a spider is not immune to the sticky parts of its own web. The only advantage that the spider has is it remembers where the sticky parts are. Okay? So, Geldfalter, the German company going under, is a direct result of the bombing of Nord Stream 2, which was done, I think we can say quite definitively, by the CIA. The only substantive reporting we've seen on it is the Substack of Seymour Hersh. But Seymour Hersh is a super connected Washington investigative reporter. I think he's in his 90s now. And I believe what he's saying. We bombed an ally's pipeline because it was Russia's. But Germany had built up its economy on that energy source from Russia. So we deliberately crippled the economic engine of Europe in this Ukraine-Russia conflict. And the moment I saw that, I knew immediately what it was. I knew that this was just an extension of the decimation of the West. Okay? Because nobody would do that to a friend and an ally. Nobody. So Germany is supposed to be our ally. They're a NATO member, right? They've dutifully paid all of their reparations from World War II. They did not declare bankruptcy. It's a remarkable thing, you know. Germany has paid back all of the war reparations from the treaty after World War II. Stop and think about that for a sec. You think the US and Canada have problems now? Well, if we had 400 or 380 million Germans, the debt levels we're carrying now and the deficits would not be a huge problem. But the Germans are the most productive people on the planet. Ergo, the question, why cripple them? You know, why cripple them? So that's my opening for tonight. I wanted to talk a little bit about the mountain and a little bit about some good news that I got in the form of this Abaca business coming back to me now, after I thought I might have to give it up. Now, I don't know what I'm going to do with my Abaca anymore. I don't know if I want to sell it anymore. I'm thinking of starting a weaving company, right? And doing drapes and mosquito netting for beds and baskets and rugs and things like this. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with Abaca. Look it up, ABACA. It's a miraculous fiber, actually. Quite a remarkable fiber indeed. But this is a very interesting story, the Abaca story, about the degree to which everything is interconnected now. How everything is just so interconnected. It's like, now it always has been spiritually, okay? But we are so accustomed to working with this man-made overlay. And the phony synthetic, the phony integrator, which is the man-made economy, which is the fiat money system, which is the central banking system that runs off of, who knows what it runs off of now. Many people are saying that Bretton Woods is dead, and I don't see evidence of that. And I'm not sure I buy any of that fear talk about us losing the reserve currency status, the United States. I'll tell you, it is amazing how fickle this modern economy is. Just in this skirmish between Trump and Trudeau, the Canadian dollar has lost like 5 or 7% of its value. Okay? When I came to Costa Rica, I could exchange Canadian currency for 500 colones, which is the Costa Rican currency, 500 colones for 1 Canadian dollar. It's now 333 colones for $1 Canadian. So in the time I've been here, my spending power has depreciated by 33%. Okay? You think about that. Now, I still work. So I do quite well in my job, actually. I've made a good career out of being a professional writer. There's all kinds of professional writing out there. There's all kinds of stuff that has to be, it's not sexy. It's grant applications. It could be a 180-page legal brief that's been scribbled out by a legal team, and they want it typeset and corrected and proofread and edited for language and clarity. I get books, other people's books. Often they're very well written. What they just lack is typesetting. Typesetting is where you get the type to a point where it looks like it was published by a professional publishing house. You don't get big spaces between words and all of the sort of awkward spacing that you get in a document that was typeset in Microsoft Word. And I do all of that work, and I do EPUBs as well. So if any of you are working on a book and you need it finalized, let me know. All right, that's what I do. That's what I specialize in. Well, one thing I specialize in, okay? So Joe Biden and his bullshit fucking blowing up of the Nord Stream pipeline, Nord Stream 2, has reached all the way to Costa Rica and affected me. That's how interconnected everything is now. Okay? So, and it was a bit of a bummer. I mean, I never dwell on stuff, especially financial stuff. I may have a habit of dwelling on emotional stuff, like relationships and stuff. But money and the vicissitudes of life and where your next meal is coming from, I've always been very, very adept at just sort of putting that in the hands of the Creator. Never worry about that stuff. And so I didn't really worry about the abaca that much. So this is good news that that the Chinese company is coming up. And I still speak Mandarin. So imagine their surprise when they get up here. And they come to this earthbag house in the middle of nowhere, and this guy walks out and shakes their hands and says, "Ni hao, wo jiao Bruce." And they're just going to fall over. I mean, it's like the last thing in the world you would expect, right? Like somebody speaking Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, in the middle of the rainforest in southern Costa Rica. But the Chinese are everywhere now. And they have their own problems, too. Everybody's running up this debt. So let me dwell on that, because like the debt and Nord Stream 2 and everything, and what might or might not be going on with Trump. But these orbs, again, you know, my theory is it's all of the above. If it were a multiple choice LSAT question, or not LSAT, but whatever they call those college entrance exams in the U.S., if it were a multiple choice question, I would cross off A, B, C, and D, because it's everything. It's high end. You know, Stephen Greer's right. Some of it is high end black site stuff. Some of it is low level drones, not consumer level, like somebody would be launching out of their backyard, but not super high level. And some of it is just the orbs, right? Which are a spiritual phenomenon, which, by the way, the best treatise that you're going to get on orbs now is Chris Bledsoe's book, soon to be a movie, UFO of God. Okay? That is a very important book for you to read if you want to understand what these orbs are. But it's not all orbs, right? Yeah, it's everything. And all of this is happening when? Okay, it's happening right in the middle of this battle between a reformed world, which, let's be honest, is a Jewish redesign of the world. It's the Jewish empire taking control of the world, which would be, I think there's a lot of things I like about the idea of a Jewish global empire. There's a lot of things I don't like, don't get me wrong, but you have to be fair and balanced, right? When you look at the people who've tried to take over the world, or vast swatches of the world, you find yourself in the company of Napoleon Bonaparte, Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan and the Mongol hordes, British imperialism, American imperialism, and we've done everything with force. Now, what's unique about the Jewish approach to world domination is it's all been done in an indirectly forceful way. They do use force, but they subcontract it out to Gentiles. They can't do that in Israel, so they're getting their hands dirty now. But for most of history, they have not gotten their hands dirty. They prefer to rely on the manipulation and the leverage of money and wealth and lending and, quite frankly, black magic. They are probably the most proficient group of people at black magic on the planet. Not all Jews. It's not the Jews, but it's Jewish, okay? I was thinking about this today as I was getting ready to do this podcast, because I happened to watch about half of Candace Owens' interview with Piers Morgan on Piers Morgan Live. And Piers Morgan is just like the ultimate dupe. Like, that guy is a fucking moron. How he's an international broadcaster is anybody's guess. That guy is literally fucking retarded. I'm like semi-literal here. Okay? I mean, he's a fucking moron. How can you be a journalist and not be a critical thinker? Right? So, and he's very, very pro-Jewish, buys into the whole thing, the Holocaust, 6 million killed, everything, because he's a fucking idiot. He doesn't do any research. And there's a reason people like that are doing well right now. And there's a reason that people like that got into power, social and media power in the first place, because that's the kind of useful idiot they want in those places, okay? But here's the thought I had today, and it's kind of a weird, wild thought, okay? The Jews aren't even Jews anymore. They have 613 laws they're supposed to live by. The core of those laws that are embodied in the Torah are the 10 Commandments. All the other laws are postmodern Judaism, post-Second Temple, rabbinical Talmudic Judaism, okay? Which, by the way, has seen no prophets. I want you to think about that for a sec. So if the Jews deny Christ as let's say he's not the Mashiach, okay? And that is a Jewish concept, and I can't say whether he was the Mashiach or not, the Messiah, okay? Because that's not my language. I didn't create the word Messiah. I didn't define it. Because of my respect for language, I'm going to leave that to the experts. And the experts on that word are the Jews. So if they're saying Christ wasn't the Messiah, I don't know what to think. My relationship or my value in Christ is just in the man himself and the words captured. I mean, he has to be one of the greatest public-facing spiritual teachers ever captured and recorded in the Gospels. And that's all I need. I don't need any title to go with that. But here's the point. They don't even recognize him as a prophet, let alone the Mashiach. Okay? Stop. they don't recognize Muhammad as a prophet. Okay? So post Second Temple of Solomon, the Jews have been living in an entirely postmodern religion with no primary sources. You know what a primary source is in journalism? An actual experiencer. So they haven't had any more prophets. So either they don't need prophets anymore and they've distilled enlightenment in their system, which would be evident, by the way. I don't see evidence of it, so I don't think that's a valid argument. And they have been barren and fruitless as a spiritual culture for 2,000 years. It's very interesting when you see it in that context, okay? But when you go back to the original 10 commandments of the Torah, given by Moses, okay? One of them that's extremely important is thou shalt not bear false witness. And that can easily, without any disfiguration of the language or meaning, be interpreted to be don't lie. Tell the truth about what you see and what you know, if asked. Okay? And I'm watching this Piers Morgan interview, and I'm watching this absolute fucking doughboy doofus defending the Jews. And I'm going, buddy, if you actually understood the Jews and what they really meant in the Torah, you'd be ashamed of what you're doing now. Your ignorance and your failure to do any research, your failure to consume propaganda like a 400-pound fat lady at a Florida buffet is disgusting. And it's just absolutely disgusting. And so what happens, and this is a big sin now, if you believe in sin. I believe sin is a discordant relationship with the harmonious center of creation that creates wave disturbances in your reality that we call karma. That's my definition of sin, off the top of my head. Kind of like the sin of blowing up Nord Stream 2 and fucking up my relationship with the German paper company that bought my Abaca. You see how the waves went out? So this money system, to go back to that thing I opened up the podcast with, is almost like a false spiritual layer on top of the whole system. Okay? Because it mimics this interconnectivity that is the principal aspect of the spiritual reality we live in. Very fascinating. So thou shalt not bear false witness. You ask any Israeli, are you genociding the Palestinians? No, we're not. Objectively, factually, they are. They're running them off their land and doing it indiscriminately and killing women, children, and babies. Everything they say was done to them, which turned out to be a lie, they're actually doing to their enemy, and contradicting the original Torah and bearing false witness. Okay? This is why I say a Torah Jew is a friend of humanity, because they live the common spiritual values that are present in elementary Hinduism, Christianity, Taoism, Buddhism. But these Talmudic fucks, these postmodern Jews we're dealing with now, they're a satanic monstrosity, is what they are. And they're on the cusp of being caught. The spider stepped on the sticky part of its own web. But they've been spinning that web for 2,000 years. You can't hold it against them for not remembering all the sticky parts, can you? Okay. Now, I'm going to... hang on a sec. Hey, buddy, I'm live on YouTube right now. People message me. It's my buddy in Panama. Now I'm going to swing over, okay? And I'm going to try to integrate these things I've talked about, because everything is connected now. Have you been watching what's going on in Canada? Yeah, dude. Send me another ping. Well, it'll be funny when he watches this. Fuck, Jim. I should just mute everything when I go to podcasts, but I really don't give a shit. Um, Something very interesting is going on in Canada. And a lot of a lot of people in this satanic culture are being thrown to the wolves now. And I think, again, this is part of the distraction. Like the drones in the sky. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention when I was talking about the drones. I had a remarkable conversation several years ago with John Edmonds on. We actually talk about this in Stardust Ranch. There were underground bases around Stardust Ranch, military bases in Arizona, big military bases, and they interact with the Greys in those bases under the ground, okay? So this secret human society is interacting with the Greys. Now, you remember what Uncle Cliff said on his podcast, that we were actually, once we detonated those nuclear bombs, we actually had visitations from benign extraterrestrials who would have helped us grow and harmonize our human civilization. And the heads of what then later became the MI6 and CIA. So this was a joint operation during World War II. The British and the Americans worked together, and they had the OSS. Okay? And as Cliff High said, and the interesting thing about Cliff High, and I gotta say this, he'll never watch this video, and I don't want to get into a fight with Cliff, because I think even near 70, he'd undoubtedly kick the shit out of me. All right, that guy has been studying Aikido and various martial arts all his life. Now, so have I, but not in as dedicated a way as he has. I mean, he lives and breathes it. And I like Cliff, even though he's only right twice a day like a stop clock. I do like Cliff. I admire his courage. But he did this Substack. Hold on a sec, I'm getting a warning here. Yeah, he did this Substack called, oh, who cares, man? My bit rate is falling. Who cares? He wrote this Substack called The Rabbi's Bigly Mistake. And if you haven't read it, go and read it, okay? I forget if you just look up Cliff High in the search queue on Substack, you'll be taken to his Substack. And then you go to the posts and just go through the column of them and look for the title, The Rabbi's Bigly Mistake. Now, you guys who've read The Devil in Us know how much I focused on this and how much intuitively I locked into all of this. And I did a 7,000-word chapter called 1947, in which I talked about all of the things that formed the world we now live in, including the UFO, including the first human-alien hybrid, alleged to be Cynthia Crawford, produced by the OSS. Now, according to Cliff, and apparently, and this is what I found amusing, when questioned about this on a big podcast, I think it was InfoWars or something, because Cliff is having his 15 minutes now. But when questioned about this, how do you know this? Cliff didn't defer to his web bots and the way he gathers all his information and processes it and runs it through algorithms to come up with a possible future, okay? He deferred to his upbringing. He talked about his father, who worked high up in the military and in many secret programs. And what Cliff said was this group of, this brain trust in the OSS, okay, the Office of Strategic Services, which was the progenitor for both MI6 and the CIA, was all Jewish. And it was so Jewish that the British and American officers and people around this intelligence group called OSS referred to them in a non-derogatory way, referred to them as the rabbis. Okay? Now, when the benign extraterrestrials came and met with Eisenhower, and this I think would have been the Zeta Reticulans, Eisenhower wanted to make a deal with them to advance humanity. And the rabbis talked him out of it and said, we'll get a better deal out of these people, and introduced him to the gray aliens. I have nobody ever told me this story. I have never heard that. If John Edmonds knew that, he would not say it out loud in a conversation with me. And I thought, what a linchpin that is. And if you've read The Devil in Us, and what I all but say that, but I can't say it. It's like the missing paragraph in the 1947 chapter. And then later, the book goes on into blood, where I talk about Jewish blood sacrifice and, the personal devil, Corinne Hustabot, and the proliferation of satanic societies, which I think have come out of the Kabbalah and dark Talmudic postmodernism. Okay? And call me an anti-Semite. I don't think that even matters anymore. But I do not want to get kicked off of YouTube my first week back, especially since I don't seem to be able to get on to Rumble right now. So they're starting to sacrifice people, and it looks like they're going to give up Justin Trudeau. Okay? And you need to understand something, okay? This is very important, and there's no way you could know this. So you don't have to feel as though your perception is dull because you didn't figure this out yourself. The only way you could know this is to spend a lot of time talking to and interviewing people either raised in or studying or commiserating or interacting with deep satanic culture. Okay? Like what I did in The Light of Darkness and in The Devil in Us. So I showed you a few clips before I went on my fast, which is going fantastic, by the way. This is an eating day. And I had a small plate of rice and beans with 2 fried eggs on top and a piece of cheese. And I feel like the 400-pound person who spent 3 hours at the buffet in Florida. Your stomach contracts when you're fasting. And another thing that happens when you're fasting is as soon as something goes in, something goes out. So the way I did a 3-day straight fast, chugging 2 liters of salt water a day to flush out my intestines. And then I went to eating once every second day. Okay, so I eat once every 48 hours, and I give myself a 3-4 hour window to eat. And I usually eat like 1 small plate of food, and I might have a small cup that deep, just a small cup of yogurt for the probiotics, and that's it. And I'm stuffed. Okay, stuffed. And I feel fantastic. And your energy levels don't go down or anything. So I highly recommend fasting. But let me get back to my story here. So many of these people out there claiming to be whistleblowers are actually sort of working for whether they're and they can be unconscious of this, because I mean these people are so traumatized and programmed from birth onwards, pre-birth. In many instances, the trauma starts in the womb. Okay? So the trauma starts at pre-birth. Very difficult to get out of it. Very difficult to come out of that way of thinking, that way of living, okay? So when Annika Lucas goes on a podcast like Patrick Bet David with 2.5 million subscribers, a big podcast, he got a Trump interview before the November 5th election. That's how big his podcast is. He was the guy that broke Dan Blitzkrieg to the world. And Dan Blitzkrieg went on in what many people consider to be a radical anti-Semitic rant. But Dan is Armenian. And he's a little pissed off that the world has never the world has never acknowledged the genocide perpetrated upon Armenian Christians by Turkish Jews. So he has and this is another thing. Like, who decides what genocides we remember and which ones we don't? What holocausts we talk about and which ones we don't? Why is the Holocaust more prominent in the public consciousness than the Holodomor in the Ukraine, or the Bolshevik Revolution, which very clearly appears to be the massacre of Christians? No religious group has been more genocided in the last 150 years than Christians. It's not the Jews, it's Christians. Okay? Anyways. So Annika Lucas goes on, Patrick Bet David, and she says several times, you got to watch the whole interview, I don't want to name names. I don't want to name names. That's not why I'm here. Naming names is about getting back at people and vengeance and so on and so forth. And those of us who survive this world, we just want to heal and grow and be able to feel love again. But PBD, being who he is, just keeps pressing her. And she gives up a few names. Fucking cats. I had a snake in here today. How does a snake get in my house with 8 cats? I'm going to cut their food rations. This is ridiculous. Wasn't a poisonous one. Oh, we killed it anyways. Yeah, just my wife. If it were up to me, I don't know. I got to get a pair of rubber gloves and pick them up and just let them go in the jungle or something. I don't like killing stuff, not even snakes. But one of the names, when pressed, that she gives up is Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And then after saying she's not going to name names, she manages to say that his thing was fucking snuff. Fuck the kid, kill the kid. And now there's rumors that this is the situation with Justin Trudeau, his son in Canada. Now, this little kerfuffle between Trudeau and Trump over what Trump calls Canada ripping the United States off for $100 billion a year has already caused a plummet in the Canadian dollar. Trudeau's on his way out. I know I have some Canadian listeners. You guys don't need to hear me talk about this. The Americans might. His finance minister, who was his closest ally, the deputy prime minister, left her job with a resignation letter that absolutely humiliated him. Okay? So I think Justin Trudeau is going to be hung out to dry. I think he's going to be exposed as a child rapist and a child murderer. I think he's one of the ones that is going to be thrown to the wolves. And again, this is just a distraction. By the way, this is what the Mashiach does. This is how the Mashiach gains our confidence. The Mashiach is the Antichrist, by the way. Okay? What else would these postmodern Talmudic Satanists be able to create if they had the magic to produce a figure on the world that could seem spiritual to everybody? What would it really be? Exactly what I just described. So I think Trudeau's on the way out, and I think that's a good thing, because he really is a horrible human being. Now, I don't get too down on these guys, because you always got to ask yourself, how would you turn out if you were raised the same way as them? Right? How would you turn out if your father was a guy that sodomized children and then killed them when he was done? Fucking snuff. How would you turn out? Kind of a person would you be? Right? Anyways, that's a pretty good, going to hit the 50-minute mark today. Takes me a while to get my stamina back once I haven't been podcasting for a while. Once you get your momentum going, an hour a day is pretty easy. But when you don't talk for a while and you come back, it can be a bit daunting. So, on that note, I think that's a good enough show for today. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.